The podcast you're about to hear was made with Anchor. Make your own podcast for free at anchor.fm.
Hey there. So let's continue the hacker series and how it is that what makes someone a hacker and how does one become one if they are not one already. So where we're at now in the article by Eric Raymond on catb.org is the hacker-nerd connection. He does say that it is a myth. You don't have to be a nerd to be a hacker, but it does help because you kind of have a lot of free time, typically, due to being a social outcast most of the time, and you also being in this nerdy mindset. You'll inherently love to tinker, but it doesn't mean that you have to be one. And a lot of times hackers have adopted the label as geek, kind of like this badge. They're honored to be called a geek. And even now, more so now than ever, I think geek is being used in many different terminologies. You have people that are geeks about this and geeks about that. I know I have friends that call themselves comic book geeks, but they're not typically a nerd of sorts that you would see in school, with those glasses on with tape on them and stuff. They're just very socially adept, maybe the word is. And so they're not nerds, but they're geeks, and that word's been being stretched out across everywhere. He does mention that the word nerd has been used in this specific way that he's talking about since the 1990s, and it was like a mild pejorative of the word geek. And it was harsher. Like, people say, "Oh, you're a geek." You can kind of take that as like, "Yeah, I know, I'm a geek." But like, nerd has a little bit more of could be more of a sting to it if someone doesn't want to be a nerd or in that same situation. So yeah, you don't have to be a nerd to be a hacker. Hackers just tinker. They love to take things apart, put it back together again, make things in ways that no one thought of making it before. And that's why a lot of hackers are programmers, because you can solve so many issues with computers these days that you don't need tools beyond a computer. Like, not everyone, but most people in the United States have a computer in all developed countries, and so that in and among itself is great because you just have to sit down and get started. That's why I love. That's why I do a lot of JavaScripting, because it's just easy to get started. All you need is a text editor and a web browser. You can run scripts in your web browser, and you can test things out and see how things work. And that in and of itself helped me understand programming more than classes did. I took classes throughout college and high school. I learned a lot in high school, but college I didn't learn much. I actually dropped out of the major and changed my major to political science, which is super goofy for a guy like me to do that. But the love for programming died in those classes. And it wasn't until recently that I got back into it. I decided to make a Chrome extension for my job to make my job easier, because we're doing a lot of repetitive tasks. It's like, this could be done much faster. So I made it, and I used JavaScript, and it was a struggle because up until that time, I probably haven't programmed in a few years, and so I had to almost relearn everything, but at the same time, I didn't, because I still had that base. So getting to understand that base is very important to be a computer hacker in the sense that we're talking about, not a malicious person. But you don't have to be a nerd to understand this stuff. You just have to have an inclination for technology, and more these days, it's becoming cool. It's becoming not so, I don't know if faux pas is the word, but it's not looked down upon to be a person who loves computers and working in it. And when this term hacker first originated, it was very much the nerds who were into computers, and they were made fun of, and they often looked funny, I guess, as you see in movies, right? But it's not the thing anymore. You don't have to be a nerd. You just have to have a passion for tinkering and making computers do things that they haven't done yet. If you have an idea for an app that's not around, make it. Jump in it and make it. Check out Electron. It's a platform that you can use JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, and you can make programs run on multiple platforms. It's very awesome. Okay, so let's get into the next section here. This is points for style. Style points for hackers. Now, Eric does mention here that these things are good. You should use these things. These are things that don't require a computer, but they are still not substitutes for the actual hacking and programming itself. But these are good. They help you in the long run. The first thing he has here is to learn to write your native language well. This is good. You don't want to sound uneducated on the internet. You don't want to sound foolish. A lot of times when you read something that has bad grammar, it's not written well, it's hard to read, it's hard to follow. It's just overall a difficult experience for everybody. Second thing he has here is read science fiction. This is usually pretty stereotypical, but there's a lot of things in science fiction that have contributed to our current society in computers. Like, we have currently these mobile devices, cell phones. Well, that was kind of first realized in Star Trek as the communicator. Communitron? I don't know what the word was. Yes, I didn't watch a lot of Star Trek. But that's where it first started. And now we have these things in computers, and this continually grows out of the science fiction realm. Third, he has to join a hackerspace and make things. It's a good way to meet hackers. Excuse me. These are actually more common today than they used to be, at least from what I can see. There's also things called makerspaces now too, which are similar. They're more of a hands-on kind of thing, less of a computery thing. Often they build things, but I believe that they're very similar. And so finding a hackerspace would be good, because you get to meet like-minded individuals. Let's see. Fourth here, he has train in martial arts form. Things like taekwondo, karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, are very popular amongst hacker community. There's also things he mentions like fencing, Asian sword fighting, sword arts, I think it has here, yeah. And things like that. They give you a mental discipline, a relaxed awareness, and a precise control over just a raw strength and athleticism and physical toughness. Because when it comes to programming and hacking in a traditional sense, brute forcing something is very inefficient, and you're going to want to have the mental discipline. You want to be relaxed and precise in in all of your actions. He has here also to study a meditation discipline. This is one I don't particularly get down with. I used to meditate, but I came into some things that I chose not to do it anymore. And I believe that there are other things you can do that give you the same result. To kind of like, the whole idea here is to sharpen your mind. I think there's other things you can do as well than meditation. He does say that it's possible to benefit from this stuff without acquiring a religion or discarding the one you already have. I'm a little weary about that, since meditation was made for a specific spiritual practice. So if you don't want a spiritual experience, or you don't want to ruin the one you have, if you don't want to mess with the one you have, it kind of contradicts that a little bit. But that's there, and if you check it out if you are interested in that. The second to last one he has here is develop an analytical ear for music. I agree with this 100%. There's a lot of things in music that really give you a mental sharpness. And as you can see, all these things are very much mental sharpness when it comes to things. And lastly, we have here develop appreciation of puns and wordplay. So, like I said before, when I was reading all of this article, it screams my personality. And even down here in the points for style, I very much have the same effect. Like learning to write your native language well. I love writing blogs, and I take the grammar very seriously. I love science fiction. I love people and being in places that hacker culture has been a thing. I didn't even notice what it was for a while. Training martial arts, I never really did that. When I was a child, I had some. I used to meditate. I love music. I have a minor in music from my university, and I love puns and wordplay so much that my wife gets driven crazy. So now let's get into the negatives, things you don't want to do that will give you negative style points, so to speak. So, Eric Raymond has listed here a few things you don't want to do. The first is, don't use a silly, grandiose username, user ID, or screen name. I don't do this. I've never done this. Well, I shouldn't say that. When I was in early high school on AOL Instant Messenger, I changed my name a lot on AOL Instant Messenger, and so I probably had some stupid ones. But yeah, don't do that. Just don't. Just use a name. Like, you want to, if you're hacking, you're doing things that are good, that are building things up and not destroying things, and so you should want recognition for it. Just use your real name or a derivative of it. Like in my situation, J.R. Swab, that is my name. My initials, my last name. Like, it's very obvious that's me. Don't use things like, I don't know, dudes with 2 zeros and a Z. I don't know, like XXX Elite Hacker with elite being spelled with numbers and just, yeah, like, that's what he's talking about. Don't do that stuff. And he does say here, if you have one, stop it. Because the hacker community, the hacker culture will mark you as a loser. He also has here, don't get in flame wars. Very straightforward, because if you're using your actual, your name and your handle, so to speak. It's not really a handle, it's like your username is your name. You don't want to be associated with flame wars. Just don't bother with that. He gets into, don't call yourself a cyberpunk. It even says not to waste your time with anybody who does. This is interesting. I think cyberpunk is enticing because of its grandiose, because of its appearance, but they're not doing anything typically. This probably isn't true for every person who considers himself a cyberpunk, but they're not doing anything that's typically advancing technology. They're not making programs. They might not even know how to program. It seems like they're in it more for the looks. And actually, if you consider yourself a cyberpunk, and you're listening to this, let me know. Tell me what it is what you're all about, because I don't really know. I'm just going off of what Eric Raymond has written here, so I don't want to just say this is stupid or bad. I don't really know. I'm just saying like what I've seen in the environment, in the culture. He also has here, don't post an email or write anything that's full of spelling errors. This gets back to the learning how to write well. You don't want to sound in your writing as uneducated, because the hacker culture does take intelligence very seriously. It's a very being smart is kind of rewarded. It gives you more brownie points or style points, and you don't want to do anything that would hurt your style points. This is very interesting. The way I'm talking about this is like you actually get points somewhere, but you don't. It's all in people's perception of you, and that's not always easy to control. But not doing the things we're talking about here it's going to help you keep your reputation at a good reputation. And I think even anybody who has a presence on the internet, who's using their real names and trying to do something, they want a good reputation, and that's very much what the hacker culture is about. Not the cracking culture, of course, but the hacker culture. And so you don't want to do that. You don't want to use silly usernames. You want to use your actual name. If you have a silly username that's concealing your identity, change it. There's no reason to do that. It goes into being, Eric Raymond says it's juvenile and a silly characteristic of crackers. You don't want to do that. And of course, like I said already before, if you're using your real name, you don't want to get in flame wars. You don't want to be associated with either side of anything. Whether you agree with one of the sides of the flame war or not, just don't be involved. It can't benefit you anyway. Because either way, one half of the population that's arguing these things is going to discredit you, and that's not going to help. If you have 50% of people that discredit you, well, now you can't even pass 50% in reputation of people who find you to be a good hacker, a good programmer, and someone that they want to associate themselves with, possibly even higher.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.